fundamentally, what Bitcoin did was totally new in human history.
How should we, or how does Islam generally view money and wealth?
Let me give you a good example, because a lot of the fatwa that came out against Bitcoin, I would say was valid.
Bismillah, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of Inspirable. For a change, I'm the host, covering for brother Shaheed Nathan. Today we want to talk about something we haven't touched upon, but something that cannot be missed. It's somewhere, it's everywhere, and that is Bitcoin and other things that come along with Bitcoin sometimes, or things that we are dealing with in modern life. So we hear about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and those kind of things. And we also hear about artificial intelligence. So we're going to kick it off with Bitcoin. And to do that with us today is brother Muaawiyah Tucker. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, thanks for having me here, mashallah.
I was going to call you a Bitcoin expert, but then I thought you might say, hey, don't exaggerate. So, but that's what I was going to call you.
I mean, I have been, essentially, I've been digging deep into Bitcoin since 2017, lecturing internationally about it as well. And that is kind of where my specialty has actually gone. So I used to be specialized specifically, obviously, about the Sharia. That's my qualifications in the Sharia. But even before Islam, I used to be into coding. I remember my mum, when I was young, she bought me an Amstrad CPC 464 computer back in the day. So that was my first experience of coding. So I had a little book. I used to type in my code and get the programs.
Is that the same thing as a Commodore? Is that 64?
Yeah. So Commodore 64 was one. There was an Amstrad, and there was different computers. But I was about 7 or 6. So I had my first experience of coding when I was young. Later on, I learned MS-DOS, Windows, and that kind of stuff. I became a certified Windows professional, whatever that means. So I've always had that background of computing and coding. So obviously, when I graduated from the Sharia and I returned to the UK and I heard about Bitcoin, it kind of fit into what I'm already knew about, you could say.
So what was the kind of first point then you became interested in Bitcoin, especially from the Islamic perspective?
Ironically, my journey kind of, even before Bitcoin, I've always been a gold bug, in the sense that I've always recognized that banks were fundamentally or inherently evil because they're dealing riba. So I've always wanted to find avenues to avoid that. So that's why in 2011, 12, 13, I was very big on calling everyone we should return to the dinar and the dirham and leave off this fiat, because I saw interest. We should return back to the old ways. That was the da'wah. And the assumption was, if we did that, then we can remove the harms that is caused on society and all of us from banks. So when I heard about Bitcoin, I was like, okay, could this do the same thing? So my interest in Bitcoin was primarily due to that. I was learning about Bitcoin, what it was, but on the surface, just in terms of could it be an alternative to the fiat system? Could it serve the purpose of avoiding riba? That was my main question. So I kind of accepted that it could be an option. But in 2017, I tried to update my website, because also I do web development as well. I was trying to update my website and allow people to pay me for my courses, because we used to do teaching, we still do, teaching Arabic and Islamic studies. And I integrated PayPal into my website. But for some reason, PayPal was giving me so much headache. And I was like, why is it so difficult just to get payment? It took me like over weeks almost, the questions, this and this. So I figured, you know what? Could Bitcoin just do it? So I downloaded a plugin, loaded it on the website, and within an hour, it was up and loaded. So I said to myself, okay, let me see, does it work? So I went to Coinbase, I bought some Bitcoin, went to my website, I paid for my own course, and it worked. And I was like, why couldn't it be this easy? And that was actually the beginning of my journey, actual practical journey, not just a philosophical journey, as in, could it be a replacement for fiat? That was my actual first engagement with the network, was me trying to get paid for courses. So that's really what it boiled down to me for me. Could it replace fiat as an actual means of commerce? And that's where it began.
What do you think? I mean, you've obviously been in this for a while now, and you've obviously dealt with, the Muslims community. So what do you think, or what have you seen that are some of the common misconceptions that Muslims have about Bitcoin?
There's a funny irony actually about that. It's not, and this isn't actually unique to Muslims. I would say Muslims inherently, by being Muslim, are already lean towards gold and silver, the dinar and dirham. Maybe it's because of legacy, because of history. We kind of have this affiliation. Also culturally, gold is very important for weddings and for a lot of things like that. So generally Muslims are already gold bugs. And what I found ironically is that because of that actually sometimes hinders people to actually consider anything else. Because sometimes people are so ideologically driven that gold and silver has to be the way. It's kind of hand waving. Nothing else could work other than gold and silver. So actually the biggest challenge has been to get people to think, actually, have you looked at why you favor gold and silver? What is it about gold or about silver that makes it special to you? And are those properties, or can they be found elsewhere? That's the first question, because if it's just, oh, we have to use gold and silver, oh, but why? Allah said so. I mean, because some people actually do say that. Then that's a challenge. Because if you actually believe that we are commanded by Allah to use gold and silver, and that if we use any other currency other than gold and silver, we are inherently sinful, that's a big challenge, because it doesn't matter what Bitcoin is, what it can or can't do, because we're supposed to use gold and silver at the end of the day. It's like saying if you have to fight a war with swords and arrows, it doesn't matter how good a gun is or a missile, you've been ordered to use swords and arrows. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. And I guess you could say if you want to frame it in terms of a misconception, it would be, what is money, and is there actually a mandate as to what must be money? That's probably the biggest misconception. But other than that, it's just to do with the most people, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, don't really think about money that deeply anyway. As in, we get paid in a currency, and that's money. That's as far as most people think about money. You don't ever think about something else could be money. So it's just that's usually the first challenge, for someone to think about what else could be this thing called money. Yeah, I think that's probably
Have you come across, because I believe it's, especially maybe if you go back a couple of years or more, there were quite a lot of the scholars saying that you should avoid Bitcoin because of the fact that maybe back then as well, I know it's maybe not the same now, there was this element of, I'm trying to think of the wording, lack of stability. There's no backbone to it, or it was looked at it's not recognized, or it wasn't being regulated by any authority. A lot of the governments weren't taking it as a recognized currency. And we've seen a lot of the fatwa shift now. So how has that been for you, navigating between, is it halal, is it haram, and how do we judge and that kind of scenario?
The thing is, when it comes to Bitcoin, I think the best way to frame it as to what actually has been happening in the last 15 years is that it fundamentally, what Bitcoin did was totally new in human history. What I mean by that is, we've never had something which was scarce. What I mean by scarce is limited with real scarcity, but wasn't a real thing. As in, for example, if you made a poem, that's a great poem, bro. I love it. But now you've told me the poem and I've memorized it, I could tell someone else, and there's no way of stopping that knowledge of the real poem spreading, because knowledge is inherently not scarce. Anything which is knowledge-based can be copied in an infinite amount of times. So therefore, using something that is not tangible as money is not realistic. It never has been until Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the first time where actually you could actually enforce scarcity on a digital realm. Now, why is that important? It's important because that's a paradigm shift. It's like the ether. I don't know if you know about that, but back in the day, scientists or physicists used to believe in what's called the ether. There's this thing that permeates throughout space-time called the ether. And that's where light used to pass through or not. Until they discovered there is no such thing as an ether. But that was a paradigm shift, because everyone believed that. It's hard for people to say, okay, wait, how's this thing that everyone believes is not actually true? It takes a while to process that, to adjust that, and not just process that, also to update assumptions. Let me give you a good example, because a lot of the fatwa that came out against Bitcoin, I would say was valid. Let me explain. It's not issued by a government. That's a valid complaint or a valid objection, but it's just not applicable to Bitcoin. Let me explain. If I was to mint any currency, even if it's gold and silver, who's to say that the amount of gold in that coin is the right ratio? Maybe I watered it down. Maybe I added copper to it. Maybe I added silver to it. Maybe it's not full gold. I don't know. So human beings have come to the conclusion that we need some kind of centralized body to verify that. That's why we look at the fatwa of the ulama of the past, when they mention about minting coins, they mention that it has to be minted from the government, because the government is taken to be, number one, reliable, or at the very least, not financially incentivized. Because companies would be. If I'm a company making money from minting coins, I'm incentivized to cheat. But a government, their job is just to serve the people. They're not invested to make money from their job. I mean, that's the principle, at least, anyway. So the idea of having a centralized, reliable body to verify that what's being said is there, that makes sense. It's just that Bitcoin solved that problem. The problem of verifiability. How do you verify that what it is what it is? And that's not going into the technicals, but basically you can say that, how do I know that pi is pi? As in, sorry to get technical, but when we do mathematics, if you want to find the radius or the area of a circle, there's a number called pi they use to calculate. If I said pi is 4, and you say, who's to prove that it's 4? I mean, where's your shuhud? Where's your witnesses? Thing is, I don't need witnesses, because it's mathematically proven itself. It's inherently proven by mathematics that it is 3.14 x, y, z. So I don't need a witness. Likewise, because the foundation of Bitcoin is mathematics, the idea of verifiability is solved by the mathematics itself. So you get what I'm saying? So the thing is, the argument was valid if it was something that needed a third party to validate. But when you actually lean upon mathematics itself, the reality of maths itself, that is the validation. That makes sense. I guess that's one of the like you said, the primary objections that was mentioned about the reliability of it. And also you mentioned about the issue of volatility. Again, that is an example of, I guess you could say, example of culture, which is weird to say it really, because we don't realize that there is a culture involved. Price being stable is something we have experienced in our lives, that the price of something remains the same. But it actually wasn't always the case. Even at the time of Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were cases where there was inflation, where the Sahaba said, "Ya Rasulullah, the prices have gone up. Fix the prices for us." And he said, "Very Allah is the one who sets the prices." And it was left. He didn't interfere with the markets. Meaning that there wasn't price stability. Even during the gold and silver era, there wasn't an idea of price stability. But because we have, in modern age, central banks whose job is to have price stability, we've got used to the idea of prices being stable. So when you have something that isn't stable, we think, oh wait, this is odd. You know what I'm saying? Especially if all you've known throughout your life is that it's always been that way. We've never lived a life without a central bank. And that's kind of partly the challenge, is that we have a lot of assumptions that we think are true that I guess probably needs to be revisited, I guess, which some are.
How should we, or how does Islam generally view money and wealth?
So I think what's very important about the issue of money and wealth, because that what you mentioned there, people might think that they're the same thing, but they actually aren't. I would say wealth is broad. Your house, your car. I mean, even you can
assets, basically.
Assets. You can even call your family an asset to yourself. That's part of your wealth, you could say. Your investments, your business, that's wealth. But money is not meant to be an asset like that. It's meant to be a medium of exchange. And that's kind of one of the, not saying the only reason, but one of the reasons why we have rules of riba, why you can't monetize money. You can't treat money as an investment. As in, I give you money and you give me back more plus interest. You can't do that with money because money is not meant to be an investment vehicle. It's meant to be a medium of exchange. Its only purpose, only function is to store value for when you're ready to spend it and use it to buy something. That's just, I want to buy a house. I need X amount of money. So I go out, I accumulate the money, and I use that to achieve the things I want. Now I have the house or the car or whatever it is. So money is inherently, it has properties which makes it different from just wealth. It is wealth. It does contain the capacity to acquire wealth and acquire assets. And you can even consider it kind of an asset. But from an Islamic perspective, it's a different thing. I mean, from a non-Muslim perspective, to them it's all the same. If you look at how non-Muslims invest, they might buy a house as an investment, might buy stocks in a company or business or whatnot, or gold or silver or whatnot, or some kind of commodity. But also might buy bonds, which is a loan instrument, which basically you're giving your money to a government or to a company, and they're promising to pay you back interest. That's what the bond is. So they're treating money as just another place to park your cash to gain income. Whereas a Muslim is very different. That's not what we do. Money's not supposed to be that. It's not supposed to be a place where you park your cash to earn money. You don't make money from having money. And that's what appealed to me about Bitcoin, is because the current fiat system we have, it has been built and structured to facilitate that reality, to facilitate the idea of making money from money. I mean, some may ask, how is that the case? Because the way that the money even comes into existence is through loans. So, for example, 98% of all money that we have in our pockets that we use came because someone went to the bank and said, I want to borrow some money to buy a house or to buy this or to buy that. And then when they did that, the bank issued new currency. And when they issued this new currency, it came into existence at that moment. People think that you go to the bank and the bank gives you someone else's money. That's not what happens. When you go to the bank and you get a loan, they are actually issuing new currency that didn't exist before. And because of that, it is birthed or born from the loan. That's why I felt that banks was inherently evil, or fiat was inherently evil, because its very core exists to facilitate loans. Whereas Bitcoin, you can't do that. There's no way to issue a Bitcoin for a loan. Bitcoin exists, it gets mined, and that's it. Like gold. Just like gold, you can't just make gold come into existence. You can't make Bitcoin come into existence. So Bitcoin and gold and silver is inherently detached from interest, whereas fiat is inherently attached to interest. So that's one of the main, I'll say, properties why I felt that for Muslims, they should really consider Bitcoin as an important thing to consider, because it has that property of being inherently not attached to riba. But on top of that, it actually is, what's the word? It actually is incompatible with riba.
Does that mean that there's no way Bitcoin can ever be involved in interest?
No, I'm not saying that. Just same way that gold, you could have interest in gold. I mean, that was just so. It's the same way we have interest in gold. I mean, that was original interest on gold. All interest basically means is ziyada, increase. So I guess maybe that's a good moment to have a side point to concentrate on that question. What is interest in the first place? Here's 4 scenarios which will hopefully make it clear what interest is. So I lend you £10. So here you go, or 10 dirhams. And you give me back immediately, right now, 10 dirhams. That's fine. I gave you 10 and you gave me back 10. Why we would do that, who knows? But we did it. Yeah, 10. Fair enough. That's perfectly fine. I gave you 10 dirhams and then you gave me 20 immediately, no delay. I gave you 10 and then you gave me back 20. That's riba. Riba al-fadl. okay, I gave you 10 dirhams and you gave me back 10 dirhams next week. Again, perfectly fine. I gave you 10 dirhams and you gave me back 20 next week. That's haram. It's riba and nasi'ah. So what we have these four scenarios, and there's only two things I adjusted, only two parameters I adjusted. One was the increase and the other one was delay. So the first two scenarios, I gave you and you gave me back and there was no delay. And in both scenarios, it was fine. Now, in the second scenario, I'm start again. The first one I gave you and gave me back immediately. There wasn't a delay. One time it was haram, which when I increased, and the other one, it wasn't haram because there was no increase. Then I gave you when there was a delay. The first time I gave you, you gave me back exactly the same amount, that's fine. And the second time, you gave me with increase and it's haram. So in two scenarios, it's haram. And all the two scenarios was when you increased in what you gave me back. And the other two scenarios, which was halal, was when you didn't increase. It doesn't matter if you delay or you do it immediately, there is no increase. I guess some of you asking, I know I used to ask myself this question for years until I came to the answer. Why would anyone give you 10 dirhams now and give him back 20 dirhams immediately? Who would do that? I mean, why would I give you 1 kilogram of gold and you give me back 10 kilograms immediately? Why would anyone do that? But they would. Let me explain. When you understand the scenario, it makes sense. Going back to the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with Bilal, he gave the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam some dates, some good quality dates, and he was impressed. MashaAllah, Bilal, he gave him some nice dates. How did you get that? So basically, I had some bad quality dates. So I exchanged 2 bags of those for 1 bag of the good quality ones. And the response was, Allah, anti-Riba. So no, don't do this. This is exactly riba. What you do, you take the dates that are bad quality, you sell them on the market, you use that money you've acquired to buy the good quality dates. You don't do the 2 bags for 1 bag kind of thing. So we can understand that with food, because like you mentioned, you had quality, good quality, bad quality. But in terms of money or gold, I should say, is there a scenario where you can have good quality gold and bad quality gold? Yes, there is. In the past, there were many narrations where some of the Sahaba used to go and look at the money that was collected for zakah. And they would deliberately remove the zayif, the coins that were counterfeit or destroyed or not there was some deficiency in them. So it was actually known that you might have some coins that were clipped, some are damaged, and some good quality coins. So they said, look, I'll give you 5 of these damaged coins and you give me 4 of the good quality coins. So it did actually happen as well. There was actually a reason to do that today. Even today, there's actually a scenario I can give you right now that I'll give an example of how that works. I've got some money, like I'm living in the UK, for example, and I don't want to pay my taxes. But I have a business. I sell stuff like handcraft stuff. I don't pay no taxes. But I want to spend my money to buy a car. If I put that money into the bank, they're going to ask you where money come from. And then they say, have you declared your taxes? And then you have to pay taxes. So how do I get around that? Okay, look. My guy, you're my friend. You've got a business. If you gift me 5 grand, I'll give you 6. So you've solved the problem for me of this, you could say, that's basically money laundering, basically. Money laundering. But there you go. That's an example of the idea of laundering. I am paying a premium to clean my money. So you actually do have a scenario where you have bad quality money and good quality money, where you might actually have an offset. So Islamically speaking, you would say to me, brother, I can't do that. What I'll do, I'll take your 5 grand and I'll give you 5 grand. I can't make money by laundering your money. I can give you the money as a gift and I can take the cash because I can spend it on what I need to spend it on, but I can't take the ziyada, the increase. So back to the point is that it's down to the issue of increase. Can you do that with gold? Of course you can. I lend you gold and you can give me back more. Can you do that with Bitcoin? Of course you can. I can lend you Bitcoin and I say give him back more. Of course you can. But what you can't do with gold and Bitcoin is issue new currency based on the loan. That's the inherent difference. Like I said, with banks, what people think happens in the bank is that they think is that when you go to get a loan for the bank to buy a house, is that the bank is giving you someone else's money. So I deposit my money into the bank because I want a savings, and the bank uses the money to do investment, babe. But what actually happens is that your money still is there. And when someone else gets a loan, they issue new currency. So very briefly, I'll take 10 seconds. Imagine there's a bank, a brand new bank. It hasn't got any money. And I come to the bank and say, yeah, here you go. Here's £100 on deposit. I'm your first customer. Sign me up. Here's £100 on deposit into your bank account. So now the bank has £100. Yeah. Then if someone else comes along, says, look, I want to be your first customer to get a loan. Can I borrow £100? The bank says, sure. So the bank deposits or puts in your account, you will have £100. So how much money does the bank have now? £200. Because your money is still there. When I look at my bank account, it says I have £100. I can withdraw when I want. And in his bank account, he now has also £100. So I have £100. He has £100. I.e., money was created. That you can't do with, that you can't really do that with gold and Bitcoin. You can do it, you could say in terms of on the books, but it'll be fraud. As in, if imagine I had a gold bullion custody service. You deposit your gold with me and I hold it for you. I could technically sell your gold, you deposit it to make some money, whilst telling you I have your gold. But if you find out, that's fraud. You can't do that. That's fraud. But with the bank, you can do that. They have legal. That's what a bank is. A bank has legal mandate. They have permission by the central bank to issue new currency. It's not called fraud anymore. It's called banking. So that's what you can't do with gold, silver, commodities, and Bitcoin. So that's kind of the properties that Bitcoin or gold has that makes it not Bitcoin. Also, not Riba based. Also, I think I mentioned very quickly that Bitcoin has properties that makes it difficult even to even do Riba. Okay, what difficulty is that? If I lend you one Bitcoin today, and you say, okay, pay me back in 4 years' time. Bitcoin today is worth $100,000, or 105 right now. In 4 years' time, what would it be worth? It'd be worth a lot more than 105,000. So that means you might be paying me back $1 million, which means why would I take out a loan in Bitcoin with interest when it's going to go up exponentially? That's crazy. There's no reason why anyone will do that. So inherently, no one would want to do that. But with fiat, on the other hand, it's the opposite. Because fiat, the value of fiat always goes down. The value of currencies always depreciates, always gets worse. So therefore, if I lend you, say I lend you 10 grand, 10,000 dirhams for 5 years, guaranteed when you get it back in 5 years' time, it's going to be worth less. So you're actually not incentivized. You're actually encouraged to charge interest. Why would I give you 10,000 dirhams for 10 years, knowing that I'm going to lose value? I actually need interest to maintain the value I have. Otherwise, it makes no sense. So with the fiat system, you're incentivized to do interest, whereas on gold and on Bitcoin, you're not. It's actually incentivized the opposite, not to do that. So that's kind of why I say that it has properties that makes it inherently anti-Riba.
And what about, I'm sure not everyone, but many people are wondering, but how does it work?
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe it is to talk about what does money do in the first place? What does money do in the first place? The best scenario I've given for Muslims is to go back to Adam and his wife and his children. When Adam and his wife and his children lived and they had food and they farmed or they hunted or whatnot, and they looked after themselves, they made clothes. Guaranteed they never had money. Because there's no need for money. They worked as a function as a family. Do you buy and sell things from your wife in your house? You don't. We all collectively work. We all collectively help each other out. And we all collectively serve our needs. But when the family grows to an extent whereby now you have long distance family, you may do things for them And you're not going to be able to remember what you did for that. You don't even see them hardly ever. Now there needs to be a reason to record what you did. Oh, remember that I did for you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I bought a wall for you, that kind of thing. You need to record these transactions, especially now you have different villages now, different tribes even. How do you record what I've done for you, what I've exchanged for you? You need to have some means to do that. That's where money comes into play. Money essentially is an understandable ledger, a record of who owes what to who. I came to your house, I looked after your child, I raised your child, I educated your child. Now I want to use that work to buy food, to pay rent. How do I transfer that value? That's the purpose of money. So if you actually think of money as on the abstract, it's not a thing. Having the dinars and dirhams in your hand, having the reals and the pounds and dollars in your hand, it's just the means to record that I've done something. That's what it is. So the question now is, if money is just to record work done or value contained or accumulated, are there other ways to record that data? So for example, let's put money aside even. Imagine you said to me, bro, I'm going to go on holiday. Can you look after my car for me? I'm going to be away for about a couple of months, maybe 6 months. I need to make sure my car is looked after. Just every month, look at it, turn the engine on, make sure it's working, just do your stuff. I'll say, okay, I do it. But I'm not going to do it for free. So, okay, cool. I'm not going to pay you for it, but let's write down on paper that you've done this work for me and have this piece of paper that you've done this work for me. So later on, you can bring it to me and say, look, I want the value of this work later on in something else. This paper now is actually money because it's recording something, it's recorded value. So basically, now you can take this idea that if money is just a record of who owes what to who, all we need then is just a record. So if I do work for someone and I want to get paid for my labor, if they can give it to me in a record I can use to buy other things, that's money. That's in a nutshell what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is what they call it, a blockchain. The buzzword here is blockchain. Blockchain basically is just a long database of transfers of money from one person to another person. That's basically it. And that's me trying to avoid all the technicals of elliptic curve, cryptography, all that stuff. Forget all that stuff. But just basically, Bitcoin is just a ledger, a record of who owes what to who. But it's just a ledger that's decentralized, that no one person controls the ledger. It's owned by and controlled by everybody. That's it.
Have you seen any notable examples of Islamic institutions or countries adopting and taking on Bitcoin?
UAE? UAE itself. So UAE completed, I think last year, or maybe the year before that, 2023 or 2024, they completed the first ever nuclear power plant in the Middle East. It was completed in UAE, alhamdulillah. And they hadn't, from what I understood, they hadn't actually connected it to the grid yet. So it was made, it was functioning, but it hadn't been connected to the grid yet. But it was still functioning, producing power. So what UAE was doing was mining Bitcoin. They connected their miners to their network or to their power production. So as they were producing power, they're using it to mine Bitcoin, which is basically to look after the ledger of the Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network, and they were accumulating Bitcoin that way. Also, there was a rumor that they have a Bitcoin fund, which is recently they were going to announce it apparently last year, but for reasons can't go into, it was postponed. So that's one country, Muslim country, has adopted Bitcoin quite heavily, UAE itself. And other countries are talking about it. So I had a meeting with some of the delegates and one of the ambassador to UAE from Indonesia last year in September. Talk exactly about that, about Bitcoin and how it could be used in Indonesia. So that's something that they're looking into. Malaysia themselves are in talks actually with Dubai. Ironically, again, Dubai seems to be like the what's the word? Seems to be not the da'i, but the
Pioneers
pioneers of that in the Muslim Ummah. The first country that's really, really behind it.
leading the way.
They're leading the way in terms of in that regards, but in terms of mining, Oman was the one that led the way. So the Oman was the first one to actually invest $4 billion into building a mining farm or a digital, what do they call it? Digital data centers. Yes, it. So data centers. So from the things they were doing in there was mining Bitcoin. Not only, but from the things that they were doing was mining Bitcoin. So Oman number one, and then Dubai number two. But Dubai is, I think, the first one to actually start actually adopting it on the balance sheet, as in keep it as a reserve. Because remember, all countries have reserve assets. Some of it is in gold, some of it is silver, some of it is assets. For example, Norway, they have a national wealth fund where they invest their surplus wealth from their oil, they have a lot of oil, in their different stocks and bonds and whatnot. So countries diversify their wealth in different assets. So I think UAE is the first one to, inshallah, according to the rumor, first one to adopt it by actually acquiring it. So and it is growing. Saudi are thinking about it. I think Qatar has been thinking about it, but haven't made steps. But these are things that are behind the scenes.
Yeah, how can Muslims get themselves involved in, I guess, what you would call the Bitcoin ecosystem?
I think the best thing my best advice, being in this space since 2017, or even 16 actually, but 2017 really, I've been practically in this space, is not to think of Bitcoin as an investment. I think one of the success stories of Bitcoin is the price. It has been, as people adopt it, this price has been going up. And because of that, people pay attention. Oh, look, it's $100,000. Wow, that's let me get some as well. But ironically, as much as it's been its success, it's also been a distraction. Meaning that people want to get Bitcoin purely just to make money. And that's a wrong incentive, I believe. Wrong in the sense that essentially, if you're saying, I want to make money from Bitcoin, what you're doing is you're still thinking of acquiring more fiat. Whereas what we should be doing is thinking, actually, I don't want fiat. I want anything but that. If it's gold, if it's silver, if it's Bitcoin, if it's assets, whatever. But I don't really want the fiat because of what if fiat inherently stands for. It stands for Riba. It stands for that institution of interest that we as Muslims are inherently against. I mean, Allah and His Messenger are war with the institution of interest. So that's something inherently we are against as Muslims. Ironically, we are the only ummah that's against interest. The Christians aren't against interest. The Jews aren't against interest. The Hindus or anyone else, no one has really anything really against interest except us. So we are actually the pioneers of being anti-Riba. So we should really be We should really be behind this ideology, or be behind this important principle of the Deen, considering that we are alone in it, and that it almost signifies or identifies or part of our identity as Muslims. Muslims are against interest. That's part of us. Just like we are against, you could say we are against zina, and we are against all sorts of sins and crimes. Interest is one of those big crimes. So we should fundamentally find any avenue to escape that institution. So that should be our primary basis. I'm interested in Bitcoin because it's a way to hold my value, my money, in a liquid asset. Meaning liquid meaning I can always spend it at any time. And from that, I can fulfill the role of it being money. Even here today, I managed to book a flight, hire a car to come here with Bitcoin. You can live on it. It's money, just like anything else. So that's how people should think about it, and not should think about it in terms of investment. That's basically really. As for how you get it, how you spend it, that's a kind of a long discussion. But it depends on where you are, which jurisdiction you are, because every country has their own exchange, how you do it, how you get it. It has a different story, but the story is still the same. Wherever you are, it's becoming easier and easier now to get your hands on it, to store it, and when you want to spend it.
What can you say as we come to the end? What are some key takeaway points you could say that we can take away from today's discussion?
I would say things are changing rapidly, globally, especially as it comes to fiat. So the global system in the world has been for more than 50 years now. More than 50 years now on the dollar standard. We used to have the gold standard, but then in 1971, the dollar was depegged from gold, and the world has been essentially on the gold standard. Yes, every country has their own currency, but effectively all currencies go back to the dollar. But what we're seeing now is that the world as a whole, the globe as a whole, is changing. Countries themselves, not just people, but countries are now looking to diversify away from the dollar and looking at other alternatives, other ways to conduct their commerce and trade. Even like Russia the other day was talking about using Bitcoin for international trade. So it's happening. So as people look around for alternatives to the dollar system, we should all be aware of what are the options available to us. What could you use as your medium exchange? We could use the yuan. We could use any other currency, but also in the discussion, Bitcoin. So we should, as Muslims, do our due diligence. You shouldn't just ignore it. Say, oh, Bitcoin is that funny internet money. Who cares about that? No, give it its due. Read, learn, educate yourself. If after that education you still don't agree, that's fine. No one forces you to take it. That's the beauty about Bitcoin. It's something you adopt by choice. You don't have to take it. You can use it. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. But it's just one of the options available. Look at the properties of things that are available and decide for yourself what serves your needs best. But what you should not do, and this is my personal advice, is look at Bitcoin as an investment. That is a very big distraction. And most likely you get burnt along the way because you trace things you don't really understand. And you buy here and you try and sell here and you go crazy, and then you get wiped out like many people do.
Well, it's been an interesting topic. Maybe I'm still a bit confused, but it shed some light. I think it's one of those topics that is quite a deep topic, but we've kind of skimmed on the surface of the essential things that we kind of need to be aware of and kind of need to know. And who knows, maybe in the future we can tackle another angle when you're back in town again, and maybe just bring something to the table, such as, how Islam, generally speaking, in detail, looks at wealth, looks at business, looks at having the dunya. Because as Muslims, we always have that, not always, but many of us have that misconception or misconception or misunderstanding of how do we navigate money, nice cars, nice house, whatever it may be, and being a pious Muslim. And that's a whole another podcast. I mean, inshallah. The
only thing I'll just conclude on saying about the issue of Bitcoin specifically is that sometimes I would say in my almost 10 years in this game, funny enough, I think the simplest thing to really say is forget all the theory. I mean, we spoke about a lot of theory, the whys, the histories, and if you just forget all that stuff, just download the wallet. You can just go to the App Store, look for Blue Wallet, just download the wallet, and just get 10 dirhams, 50 dirhams of Bitcoin sent to you, or send and then send it to someone else. Just actually use the thing like money, and that's probably the easiest thing to do. You don't actually need, just like money. Do we know how banks work? We don't. But do we use the banks? We do. So sometimes we want to know how Bitcoin works before we use it, but we don't actually need to know in order to use it. I mean, all we need to know is it's used globally by everyone. So how it works under the hood, unless you're going to build something on Bitcoin, you don't really need to know it. That's just sugar on top. It's extra thing. But the fact is, if nation states are buying it, then I mean, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Yeah. So that's what it is, man.
Sharing that with us, and also for the viewers, thank you again, Jazakumullah khair, for tuning in. And we hope that you've been take some kind of inspiration, hence the name Inspirable, from today's session. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all.